welcome to another video. I will eventually do the My Perspective series on Anakin Skywalker, but I wanted to do something a little in between before we go to the prequels. I wanted to stick with the original trilogy for a bit. So, Darth Vader, a complicated villain. Since I completed my little series on Luke Skywalker, I felt it only natural to talk about Darth Vader. I will not be doing a My Perspective series on him, though, at least not yet. Keeping in the confines of the original trilogy, Vader's story is pretty vague. A pupil of Obi-Wan Kenobi before turning to evil, an enemy of the rebellion, no tolerance for incompetent Imperial officers. It was more his look and presence than his story in the beginning. It wasn't until toward the end of Empire that it's learned that he is the father of Luke Skywalker, making Vader a bit more humanized. His obsession with Luke to join him and rule the galaxy as father and son made it known that he needed Luke in order to destroy the Emperor. It's clear at this point that Vader only seeks power, not a very interesting motive since pretty much all villains seek the same. What sets Vader apart is his mission to attain it. We already saw on multiple occasions how powerful Vader can be, and if he needs Luke's help, then the Emperor must be much more powerful. What we don't know is exactly why he wants the Emperor off the board. It's assumed Vader just wants to be the ruler himself. In Return of the Jedi, Vader seems distracted. Finishing the second Death Star seems to be the top priority, as seen when talking to Moff Jerjerrod. Not much later, the Emperor himself arrives and Vader takes the back seat. The Emperor shares with Luke his vision, and Vader merely waits for Luke to present himself. When Luke surrenders himself, there is a conversation that I briefly covered in my last perspective video. Vader is dead set on taking Luke to the Emperor, while Luke is trying to bring Vader back from the dark side. Vader does not falter. He must obey his master. Appearing to be set in his ways, Luke just says his father is truly dead. I still believe it was here that Vader started to have second thoughts. Luke is brought before the Emperor, and while Luke is antagonizing the Emperor, Vader tries to get Luke to stop. No matter how many times I watch this movie, or even the entire trilogy for that matter, I always see this part where Vader's humanity starts to show. It may not seem like much, but he looks to be showing some kind of care for Luke. This is further touched upon when Luke takes his lightsaber from the Emperor and attempts to strike him down, only to be blocked by Vader. Again, I had mentioned this before, but I feel like this is integral to Vader's story. He saves Luke from turning down the same path he did. If that is not showing a level of loving care, I don't know what does. Even during the fight, Vader was conflicted. Luke sensed it, but Vader denied it. It took Vader instigating Luke with mention of his twin sister for Luke to draw upon his anger and defeat Vader, cutting off the same hand that Vader did his. Vader watched as Luke denied the dark side completely, even throwing away his weapon and admitting he's a Jedi like his father before him. I believe it was here that Anakin started to come out completely. He saw his son, his own flesh and blood, make the choice he should have made from the start. And when Luke is being electrocuted and killed, Vader is no more. Anakin returns fully and kills the Emperor to save his son, to save a Jedi. He knew he was going to die and did not care. Anakin, in that very moment, came to terms with everything he had done and accepts his fate, but not before looking upon Luke with his own eyes and telling him he was right about him. Vader was a terror upon the galaxy. His atrocities cannot be justified, but he was also a broken man, a shell of his former self. His humanity didn't return until he learned his son was alive and eventually saved him. Watching the original trilogy over again after finishing Return of the Jedi only enhances Vader's story, much like the prequels enhance it even more. This is why I am and forever will be a Darth Vader fan. Now, this is something that I just was thinking about shortly after finishing my last video about Luke, and I felt I couldn't move on from the original trilogy without talking about Vader. Now, I will cover it again later because this is more like um, a view at it just from the original trilogy. Without knowing any other context, this is what we know in the original trilogy, as if the original trilogy was the only thing you ever saw of Vader. But when I go through my Anakin perspective, I will come back and then use that context from the prequels that we know of Anakin and how it led up to him being Vader and how it changes the story and how you see Vader. Because I think that that's kind of where I'm trying to get at, because this was my experience when I was introduced. Because as I've said before, I was introduced to the uncut theatrical cuts of the original trilogy. And I watched those first, and that was the only movies I had for like what 4 or 5 years before Phantom Menace came out. Then I had to wait 3 years after each movie, like people did back when the originals came out. But having that full story and then watching 1 through 6 of George Lucas's saga, you look at the original trilogy different. A lot like how recently Andor season 1, 2, and then Rogue One changes how you look at everything else. Even Andor season 1 and 2, how do you look at Rogue One differently because there's more context now. That's how I feel Star Wars should be expanded upon. You know, use more context to enhance something. I mean, maybe in the future, as much as I dislike the sequels, maybe in the future there will be something like that where there's more context and it enhances the sequels. You know, the prequels had that treatment with the Clone Wars. That's how Star Wars should be built upon, I believe. And that is my entire point. And bringing back the positivity is just merely looking at someone else's point of view. You don't have to agree with them, but just don't attack them for it. It's really that simple. Just don't attack people for their opinions. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to agree with it. Just move on. It's that easy. It's really that easy. If you are seriously offended by someone else's opinion, then that's more of a you problem than someone else's. There are things that you have to take care of. I was once in that position myself. I was once in the position where people's opinions bothered me for some reason. I was wondering why. Well, I found out that I had problems of my own that I had to deal with. And once I dealt with those problems, some of them still remain. I'm not perfect, but the majority of them are dealt with. I looked at things differently. Once you admit, you have issues too, and you start working on them, you get to the point to where you don't care what people think anymore. And that is pretty much where everybody needs to be. You can still talk about Star Wars on a positive note, even if you disagree, and still not care. So that's my little TED talk, and hope to see you guys again soon when I start the Anakin Perspective series. And yeah, may the Force be with you, and have a good morning.